This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. But a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, let's take a look at our top stories. The Slovakian Prime Minister is in a critical, life-threatening condition tonight after he was gunned down at point-blank range in what's being described as a politically motivated assassination attempt. Court cases in England are facing delays after the government activated an emergency measure to deal with prison overcrowding. Ukraine's President Zelensky has postponed all his scheduled foreign trips as his troops withdrew from some areas in the northeast of the country in the face of a renewed Russian assault towards Kharkiv. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with Kevin Maguire, Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and the Whitehall Editor of the Daily Mail, Claire Ellicott. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, The Guardian leads on the attempted assassination of the Slovakian leader, saying he is fighting for his life. The Mail says that Europe is on edge after the Slovakian Prime Minister is gunned down, reporting of fears that Putin will exploit the attack. An image of the shooting in Slovakia dominates the front of the Telegraph, but they lead on a report that the NHS turns on doctors who whistleblow. The Metro hails a breakthrough by UK scientists of a simple blood test that could detect cancer 7 years before the symptoms appear. The FT carries a warning from business leaders to Rishi Sunak that his migration policies risk undermining investment in the UK by weakening the university sector. Whilst the Mirror carries a Keir Starmer exclusive where the Labour leader lays out his 6 fixes for Britain. The Times also leads on the Labour leader as Keir Starmer lays out 6 pledges to voters ahead of the general election. The Express says Brits are racing to cash in their pensions early to help with the cost of living. And The Star says human beings are close to being able to chinwag with apes after decoding their size and roars. Well, the roar would be quite easy to decode, I'm guessing. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And as I mentioned, we're joined tonight by Kevin Maguire and Claire Ellicott. Thank you both so much for being with us. Okay, there's one story that is dominating quite a lot of the papers. Let's start with the way it's treated in the Daily Mail. It is, of course, the assassination attempt of the Slovakian Prime Minister. So the Mail going with this: Europe on edge after pro-Russian Slovak Prime Minister is gunned down. And Kevin, I guess this shows, obviously, the fact that there's been assassination attempt on a NATO leader, an EU Prime Minister, but it does have implications beyond Slovakia.
No, absolutely. And he was pro-Viktor Orban in Hungary, very right-wing leader, pro-Putin in Russia. Putin said it was a monstrous crime. Well, he would know a lot about monstrous crimes, Putin, but in truth, there are big implications. And we don't know yet the motive of the 71-year-old poet who's been arrested on suspicion of the shooting, but of course it's said to be political. But why is it political? What is it that has motivated him? Is it Putin? Is it because he wants to cut aid to Ukraine, or is it attack on LGBT rights, or is it
migration?
Migration, curbs on media freedom. What is it? And that we don't yet know. But it is on it is on a knife edge, and it's bad for democracy. Whatever you think about his politics, he was elected, and for democratic leaders to be assassinated or attempted assassinations is just destabilising for every democratic country.
Because that's even what even his political opponents in Slovakia said, that it's bad for democracy.
Well, of course, and I think they've come out tonight and said that this was a politically motivated attack. And he's a very populist figure, he's very divisive. Slovakia is a very split country. You've got a very kind of big middle class who are very liberal and pro-Europe and Europe-looking. And you have another part of Slovakia that is very pro-Russia. And he sits on that. On that, and he's very, I think he's been a very divisive figure, but I think he's done a lot of crackdowns on the media. There was some protests, there's lots of protests about about press freedom, and also about there's a prosecutor general, I think, that he's tried to abolish the office of. So he's obviously a very divisive figure, but he has been elected for 4 terms. I think it's his 4th term now. So he is also popular. And I think the real lesson in this is that it destabilises Europe, and it makes the continent, which already looks, you have Ukraine and Russia, we have war in Europe for the first time in many years. We also have an attempted assassination of a head of state for the first time in many, many years, and it's not pretty much...
I think who is the winner? And you would think it's Putin is the winner at the moment.
Although he was a supporter, or is a supporter.
He was, but he can capitalise on it, and he's invaded Ukraine, at war with Ukraine, and the European Union, NATO have sided with Ukraine.
Let's just pull up the front page of The Guardian. I mean, same story, slightly different take. Slovakian leader fighting for his life after assassination attempt. And again, they say fears for democracy after veteran populist Fico gunned down. They call him a populist because he's a hard one to pin down. He's left-wing, but has some policies that you would think would be quite radical right.
Yeah, I mean, he's quite reactionary. I often think reactionary is a better term than populist. Okay. Would apply to Donald Trump too. He's often said to be a populist. I think no, he's very reactionary with his attitudes to so many people, so many groups of people. But all politicians in the end, they're not, they're bits and pieces, aren't they? But it's where is the weight of your politics? And I think he was. I would say I'd class him as a reactionary, not a populist.
Well, his government ministers described the situation as life-threatening, so we'll see how it develops. Worth remembering as well that there's EU elections coming up in 3 weeks, I think. So, a lot of moving parts there. Let's go to the Mirror front page. Let's bring it up. Keir Starmer saying, my 6 fixes for Britain. So, Claire, what are Keir Starmer's 6 fixes for Britain?
Well, they're all very familiar. It's this pledge card that Keir Starmer's due to unveil, I think, at an event tomorrow. And he's going to deliver economic stability, cut NHS waiting times, launch border command, set up Great British Energy. No mention of how much that's going to cost, of course. Crack down on antisocial behaviour and recruit 6,500 new teachers. Now, we've had many of these pledges before. Interestingly, the new one seems to be border command. He seems to have finally woken up to the fact that Britain cares quite a lot about immigration and that it's quite an important thing to have a policy on. But this is very similar to his 5 missions, which he unveiled before. Labour have been honest about this. They say this is not him setting out anything new. This is him sort of distilling his key priorities for voters. This is his pledge. And, of course, we remember other pledges in history that were like this. Tony Blair had his very, very, very similar list of priorities.
He had 5.
And that was 5. And Ed Miliband famously had his Ed Stone, which was 10, I think.
Yeah, I think he's avoided the Ed Stone.
The Ed Stone, we won't talk about that. So, yeah, this is him setting out his promises to voters that he hopes to deliver on. But there's not very much between him and the Tories on some of these pledges.
I think the 6,500 new teachers, which will be funded by VAT, partly funded by VAT on private fees. It sounds great, 6,500 new teachers, until you think across the UK there are about 30,000 schools. So it means you get 1 new teacher per day, per week.
I'm also not sure they're definitely teachers.
But Great British Energy is to capitalise on green, cheaper energy, more secure down the line. Also, all these 6 have been in the mix for some time. It's interesting on the economic stability. He hasn't gone for his mission of the highest sustained growth in the G7. Hard to sell that on the doorstep, I know. What does it really mean? But nevertheless, he's just gone for economic stability. But it's what's not in, I find interesting. The 1.5 million new homes, 300,000 a year, that's not in. And Angela Rayner's New Deal for working people, improved protection at work, that isn't in. That's not made the cut.
Okay. Which is very interesting because unions have been discussing all of this in recent days. There's loads of suggestions that Keir Starmer may be watering down some of these quite radical pledges from Angela Rayner, his deputy. She's fighting very hard to keep them in. So the fact they're not on this pledge card, it'll be interesting to see what she thinks about that.
But all 6, you can come up with a backstory to them. But it is interesting why Tony Starmer or Keir Blair has decided to go down this route.
Well, he does mention, I mean, point 3, obviously, launching a new border command.
Yeah.
Like you say, Claire, immigration, and there's a story from page of the Financial Times, which is, of course, Related to this, business leaders warn Sunak that Tory migration policy threatens investment. Now, these are groups, for example, mining companies like Anglo American and Rio Tinto. And the point that they're making specifically is about university students. So there's obviously fewer for a variety of reasons, and that is having an impact on them. Kevin?
Yeah, it is interesting because people who come to Britain to work or study contribute to the economy, and they are a net plus, even if you take into account the services they consume. They keep the economy going. In fact, the economy is down per head, per capita, and if it wasn't for migration and students, it'd be a lot further down. So you can see why companies are saying, look, you're going to keep out all these people who are very skilled, they're boosting, they're helping us. You're going to damage the economy. And it's a trade-off that Sunak opposed tougher controls because he knew this when he was Chancellor. And then there are others in the Conservative Party who take a more purist, anti-migrant line, tend to be very loud Brexiteers who thought that would cut migration. Then it soared to a record 750,000 net. But they've raised the starting salaries from 26,000 to 38,700, which is a big jump. But firms are saying, look, we will pay a price.
Do you think, Claire, the fact that firms are saying this is going to have any impact whatsoever on the government?
Well, I mean, Rishi Sunak's catering for the right of his party, who are very concerned about very high levels of migration. And it's not just the legal migration, which many people are fixated on, the boats, small boats coming to the country. It's also the legal migration. And there's huge numbers of students come to the UK to study, which, they help to prop up universities. They pay lots of money in fees, higher fees than we do.
A lot of universities are very upset about the fact
a lot of universities are almost entirely reliant on this, this sort of trade. And the trouble with it is that the UK taxpayer also subsidises education in this country. And so you have a situation where you have lots of people who stay for a bit. Some of them overstay their visas. A lot of the people on Tory right are very concerned about this. But I think there's a quote in here from one of the Migration Advisory Committee. They also say there's not really a big compelling economic case for having loads of international students in the UK, and that the cost benefits don't actually work out. But obviously they're hugely important.
Earlier in the week, there was an official report that said there's no evidence students abusing the visa system, but they tend to pay higher fees than British students.
Oh, twice or three times as well.
So, it's ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching all the way. And if they don't go to Britain, they'll go elsewhere. But also when students from around the world come to Britain, assuming they have a good experience and they go back, it's very good for Britain's status in the world and soft power, because they tend to be well qualified and do well in their countries too, and can actually become politicians and leaders.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to have to leave it there for now. Coming up, Britons go crazy cashing in their pensions. We'll discuss that story in The Express just after the break.
Well, at risk of sounding mealy-mouthed, good and bad, I mean, I think the face has got a real sense of character to it. He looks sort of benign, slightly apprehensive. It looks like him. It looks like a living image, which is important. It's a very important part of a photographer to catch this sense of someone living through the sitting, living through time. But at the same time, he's vanishing away into all that red. It's a sort of fiery furnace all around him. I'm not quite sure why. I believe it's supposed to echo the uniform of the Welsh Guards, which he's wearing, which is red. But it subsumes him. And if you think about the great portraits of the past, you think of Van Dyck and Charles on his horse, his predecessor, Charles, on his great horse thrusting, or Holbein's very famous Henry VIII, this huge figure presenting himself to the world. And instead we have this king who's almost vanishing, he's dissolving. But it feels very randomly modern to me. I see no reason to have this great cloud of red around him. I think I prefer a painting, which is, this is a portrait. It's his first portrait as monarch. it would be a good portrait if he was set in a symbolic stage set, I think. And instead we have this, well, as I say, a vanishing figure. I would still argue, but why? Why have this great sea of red?
I'd argue why not. I really like it.
Do you? Well, it depends. I mean, it's a matter of taste, but I mean, it's hard to judge, but it is an enormous painting. That's another thing. And apparently he had to stand on a box to paint it, and the king stood on a box that they
Yes,
could be
8'6" by 6'6" apparently. So that's a whole lot of king and a whole lot of red.
It is a huge sea of red, and it also depends a lot where it's going to hang. I mean, it doesn't look too bad behind the gold setting where it's hung now. It just seems to me a random choice to have this sea of red. But I mean, maybe a random choice you like, a random choice I don't happen to like.
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our planet. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Kevin Maguire, Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and the Whitehall Editor of the Daily Mail, Claire Ellicott. OK, let's go to the front page of the Daily Express. The title there, Britain goes pension cash-in crazy. Claire, what's the story here?
Oh, I love this idea of pensioners going crazy and spending all their money. It's brilliant, isn't it? So I think this is a Scottish widows study that has shown that 3/4 of retirees have already withdrawn money from their pension pot. Now, there were changes a few years ago under George Osborne, I think, to allow pensioners to start dipping into their pension pots from the age of about 55. So there was all these suggestions at the time that they go out and they buy Maseratis, I think it was, and they spend all their money. And obviously that hasn't happened. They've been far more sensible than that. But clearly people are feeling now that they have to dip into it, and we have got a cost of living crisis. You know, they're the bank of mum and dad, aren't they? They're probably helping to subsidise a lot of their younger
as well.
But the problem is you live longer, then you've spent it, so you've got nothing left. I mean, pensions are deferred earnings. You spend it now, you won't have it later. I think there's more than 70 billion being taken out since that change. It's kept the economy going.
Gosh.
But there will be a
incredible
problem down the line.
Now, we do have a good news story. I don't want to say for once, because that's a bit pessimistic, but, for once, Metro, blood test to give us a 7-year notice of cancer. So this team of British scientists have discovered this test that lets you know 7 years before. I don't quite understand whether it's symptoms or whether it would develop, but regardless, it's great news.
It's research for Cancer Research UK, so very reputable. And it is proteins are detected in your blood that indicate which cancers you will get.
Yeah.
So if the proteins are detected, they can begin treating you so you don't get the cancer. Now that's it's got a fantastic breakthrough if it can be brought to fruition.
When prevention is so
absolutely.
crucial. And here it says it's 19 types of the disease.
Yes, I mean, it's extraordinary if they're able to do this. And you wonder, I don't even know how treatment would work if you know 7 years in advance. But you would also hope that people could get GP appointments so they could actually have some of these tests done. That probably needs to be said. But, these are really important steps towards defeating the one disease that humanity hasn't got on top of, and that kills millions and millions and billions of people around the world all the time.
Science gives great hope.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It is a good news story. Now, just to finish this, the Daily Star, Dr. Dolittle, weekend chinwag with apes. So there's a picture of someone, well, having a pint with an ape. Well, no, having a pint with someone else, but an orangutan looking on and saying they could be letting us know their thoughts on world events. I don't know why specifically world events, but they revealed they're close to decoding their sighs and roars.
Yeah, people claim they can talk to their cats and their dogs, don't they?
Parrots.
Your budgies. So why not? Why not animals that are very, or creatures that are very close to us?
And there's whale song, isn't there? They think they can really understand what how the pods communicate with each other. So it's not far-fetched, but it's...
But if a great ape...
gone on the orangutans.
But as you were suggesting earlier, if a great ape was running at you roaring, I think you know...
You wouldn't wonder, like, what's he saying?
It's rather like, get off my land, or something like
Something
that.
like
There's 1,033 different size and roars. Who knew?
There you go. On that note, Claire, Kevin...
It's bigger than my vocabulary.
We'll see you in just a few minutes. Now, let's take a look at the weather. Conditions will remain unsettled for much of England and Wales for the next few days, but the weekend will bring quieter weather, albeit with a few showers. It'll be a mild night for most, but temperatures will fall back to single figures in the south with the risk of some patchy mist and fog. The cloud belt affecting central and eastern areas will continue to give some patchy light rain, whilst some more persistent rain will approach the southeast. Showers will become widespread across England, Wales and Ireland through the morning, some turning heavy and thundery. More general cloud and patchy rain will affect eastern and northern England, along with southwestern Scotland. Temperatures will reach the late teens in Celsius for most, but it will become warm in the sunshine over Scotland, with a high of 24 or even 25 Celsius. Later in the day, the wetter weather will become confined to Wales, the Midlands and the northwest. And coming up next on Sky News at 11, the latest on the condition of Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico after an attempted assassination.
Why we love Qatar Airways. They travel from 13 Indian cities to 170 destinations worldwide. Let's go together.
We're very blessed in Saudi Arabia. 2/3 of our population is actually under the age of 35, which means we're a very, very ambitious nation. It was a very big achievement for us to have reached 100 million visits in 2023. This was based on sustainable effort and investment into the sector. We're sharing our culture across the world. Everyone's excited about Wusti Expo 2030. I'm astonished by how diverse the food is, the dialects are, the culture is, the clothing, the colors, the architecture, whether it's the colors and corals of the Red Sea or the beautiful green mountains of the south. The real deal is to come and meet our people and see for yourself.